Good evening, viewers. You're watching SKTV News. This is yet another episode of the Manipur Files. Today, we're going to discuss something that has never been looked into so far. At first, you oppose the demand, in fact, of the scheduled tribe status of MEITEI, and then you kickstart a global campaign for a separate country called the Zalengam, or simply called the land of freedom. Now, the violence, is it a tactic, is it a path that they took to fulfill this long pending dream? To help us unravel Zalengam and its nexus to Manipur crisis, we are joined online by Dr. ELANGBAM BISHWAJEET, a MEITEI diaspora in UK. Tamo BISHWAJEET, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We are also joined by Dr. MALEM, NINGTHOUJA, and independent researchers. Tamo MALEM, welcome to the show as well.
Hi.
Tamo MALEM, let's start with you. I'm given to believe sometime back, or I think years ago, you had, in fact, a kind of interview over print. You had sent out a set of questionnaire to, the person behind this demand of Zalengam, and P.S. Haukip, who also wrote a book about this. So let's start from there, Tamo MALEM, and obviously you can give your opinion about the Zalengam and its nexus to the current crisis. You can start, Tamo MALEM.
Thank you very much. Zalengam is a political concept.
Right.
Then it is also a political project, and it has the territorial expressions. Now, to begin with, in fact, this particular term called Zalengam was coined by a Haukip leader.
Yes.
And endorsed by the Kibzens, because we have so much of clan politics
Right.
within the so-called these things, the cookies. And this term came into being after 1988. 1988 is very significant because this is for the first time in the history of Manipur after the merger to India that armed Kuki groups started emerging.
Right.
And it also has certain correlations with what was happening at that point of time in Myanmar. Although in the initial period, Kuki migrants have completely got assimilated into Manipur and have been a very important key players in the development of Manipur politics after 1947 and all. And then all different views have been accommodated, and we have come up with the idea of one Manipur, one peoples, and the responsible government was established in 1947. So whatever the community organizations that existed at that point of time all got some kind of reconciliations, and a new Manipur came into being in 1948 onwards. So I was saying that in 1988 was a significant step for the first time that armed Kuki groups have come into being.
Yes.
The political concept of the Zalengam is that it's a land of freedom for the Kukis.
Right.
And they're going to say that whatever land that we will demand or we will call should be organized and articulated in such a way that it belongs to ancestral Kuki land. And the whole idea is that it's the land where they emerged, where they originated, and where they fought, and where they fight, and where they are going to fight for the subsequent point of time for their sovereignty. But when I say it's a political project, then it means that it has to be Zalengam has to be converted into a nation. It was still not a nation, but the objective is that that it's going to be converted into a Kuki nations where there would be consolidations, and which will also involve separation of other minority rights within this territorial landscapes, and where they are going to assert for a political expressions. But then, technically, we will come about that later on.
Sure.
But let me tell you that it's a territorial expression, and it's an expression encompassing a very big landscape, in fact, encompassing so many territorial areas in India, then Myanmar, and Bangladesh. But the epicenter of Zalengam obviously is Manipur, where it's being considered as the central Zalengam. It's from here that they are going to take off this entire territorial expressions, where they are going to spread this political concept, where they are going to articulate this whole Zalengam idea. So I would first of all say that it's a late phenomena which came into being in after 1988. It's coined by Haukip leaders,
Yes.
endorsed by Kibzen, supported by Gangtes. In fact, the initial input was given by the Gangte academicians, which started writings about the cookies of Manipur and etc. and all in academic works.
Right.
So extensive propaganda will start from the early 1990s, say around 1991. After 1991, where written literatures are going to emerge a lot. And mind you, it also coincides with the collapse of communism and adoptions of open door policy by the Indian state, which also has its own capitalist expansionist views and objectives both in northeastern India and in the neighboring countries. So let me just sum up that it's a very complex phenomena where this particular group and where these particular ideologues and the political activists are going to start it, and the initial start comes from 1988 onward. Okay, let me stop here for the time being.
Sure, that's right. I mean, in fact, like very rightly mentioned by Tamu Malem, Tamu BISHWAJEET, coming to you, where Tamu Malem clearly said the dream is to bring together all the Kuki-Chin territories of Myanmar, Bangladesh, Mizoram, Manipur, and to fulfill this dream, like I mentioned earlier, the land of freedom, as they call Zalengam. Now, how Tamu BISHWAJEET, as someone, as a Meitei diaspora and as a doctor or as a civilian staying in the UK, A, how do you see the current crisis in Manipur, and B, this Zalengam, is it outdated, or even it can be even termed as xenophobic in this 21st century globalized world? How do you look at it, Tamu BISHWAJEET?
Thank you very much, Priyobarta, for inviting me to this extremely important discussion. As you just seen and heard, the idea of Zalengam and the politics around is very, very complex.
Right.
And I think I should applaud Dr. Malem for the very short but succinct education on Zalengam. It's so important to understand this. And I come into this picture as a civilian who is staying outside, who genuinely wants to help Manipur in some way or other to bring a way forward. And what I've just realized in the last 5 minutes of what Dr. Malem has just mentioned is a lack of knowledge in myself, and I think it's more of a reflection on me. It's a very, very complex thing. And when I got this invitation about this discussion, I tried to look up a bit about Zalengam, and I managed to get a soft copy only yesterday.
Right.
And I haven't even had a chance to read it. And I'm just thinking, there may be lots of people like myself who really wants to do something for Manipur, but at the same time hasn't put the time and effort to understand what actually is going on. For example, reading this book called Zalengam, which is so important in understanding or having some idea about what's going on. I see a lot of what I call as, from a doctor's perspective, is I see symptoms. I see that there is firing there is issues over there, but we need to look deeper. And I think that is the first thing that I've seen myself, that if from a civilian perspective, we really, really need to reflect on possibly individuals like myself who probably has not put the effort in to understand deeper. My only thing which I have done so far is, make some donation, or no, I wouldn't say donation, make some contribution towards the relief camps. And it has to be way beyond more than that. Now, with regards to the xenophobia, I think that's a very, very important question. I just looking, and when I was looking to a couple of things, one thing that jumps out from my civilian point of view is the concept of what's called Levanstrom, which Dr. Malem has highlighted in the interview he has done with Mr. Haukip. And I was quite shocked and surprised to hear about this, especially from the perspective of somebody who's staying in UK. And I happened to have a chat with my daughter about what is the history they've been taught in this school,
Right.
because I want to understand what it's about. it's just coming back. In Germany, the education in class 9 and 10 is so heavily on the Nazi philosophy,
Right.
on Nazi ideology, on the Holocaust, that it occupies, it is being described as that the students are taught so much that they get bored of it. Not bored, but you know what I mean? It's,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to bring up is, in Germany, Lebensraum is an ideology that was used by the Nazi, where they felt that they need to expand the territory, and anything else who is not a German or a Nazi were seen as inferior racially, and this led to what they call as a mass killing of people from Poland, people from Czechoslovakia, especially in Eastern Europe. And this has been taught in schools again and again that this is wrong. So the whole idea about education is to ensure that this kind of ideology, the Nazi ideology of Lebensraum, doesn't repeat back. Unfortunately, I just happened to find recently that it is part of Zalengam, and that is very, very worrying. And I wish to take the opportunity of this platform to request all that we are in the 21st century, and as a civilian, as somebody who wants to see the way forward in Manipur, to please reflect, to please introspect why Manipur is burning, and is there a role for philosophies like the Nazi ideology?
Right.
So wrong. And I'm sure the good people and the government will look into this seriously and ensure that it may be xenophobic, it may be even racially very wrong. These are things that that is right. In MAITEI it says
Yes.
it's kind of thing like that. It's culturally embedded so much that the Nazi philosophy, Nazi ideology, it is just pushed outside. But at the same time, discussed to such an extent that the school students are taught so much. So to answer to your question, as a civilian, how I see is that everybody wants to move forward, but I think we need to understand the situation deeper. We need to reflect on, like, individuals like myself who has not put the time to understand what's going on. Look at books like Zalengam, what is literally written there, what's driving it, and at the same time learn from the countries where similar ideology has suffered, by millions and millions of civilians and soldiers have died in Europe as well as in Asia. We know Second World War came in Manipur as well. So we have to reflect deeply.
Absolutely. Like to stay on to Taung BISHWAJEET's point, for example, let's look at countries like, like European countries or the UK or even the USA who were involved in the Second World War. What would they think about this Nazi-based ideology, insurgency movement in Asia, particularly in India as well? So and moving on, Taung Malem, so by yours and Taung BISHWAJEET's opening statements, or even the same thought across majority of the population right now, we cannot deny that this crisis somewhere or other is related to their long pending dream of the land of freedom, or simply called the Zalengam. Just for our viewers, knowledge, and also Taung Malem to continue later, the Kukichin leaders tried to, if just to remind ourselves, to bring the crisis on an international level. First, they approached the American president, even approached the Israel Prime Minister, even influenced the European Parliament. We all saw that. And there was this viral video doing the rounds of one Lin Gangte seeking support in Gurudwara in Canada. That's the same place where the chief of Khalistan Tiger Force, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, had lived and worked till he was finally shot dead. So Taung Malem, to reflect back upon Zalengam, all these connections that we just made. So there's no denying the fact that this crisis somewhere or the other is inching or moving towards this dream called Zalengam. Take it over from here, Taung Malem. Taung Malem, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Dr. BISHWAJEET just raised an issue on Nazism, and you were also talking something about a very extensive international propaganda. In fact, I have so many things to say.
Sure.
But to cut it short, if you try to relate the cookie levanterant with the Nazi objectives, then let me also just throw you a highlight.
Sure.
Nazi is a fascist power, and what actually is fascism? Fascism is the open terroristic dictatorships of the most chauvinist and the reactionary elements of finance imperialism. Now, the cookie leaders, etc., may not necessarily be finance imperialists in that sense, but the kind of link and the informations that we are getting now, how they are directly or indirectly being supported by big, powerful forces,
Right.
which has a fascist tendency, both in India and both in the West, and which also are, in fact, collaborators of finance imperialists, trying to extract as much as from the Indo, Burma, Bangladesh, and Southeast Asian borderlands. We now find cookie leaders and the way how they operate to be
Right.
quite working like a proxy of these fascist elements. In fact, that's where, in fact, I can relate to what Dr. BISHWAJEET says about the Lebanstrom and connections between Nazism and fascism, etc. This is something that we can explore more. I can,
Sure.
if given time, we can deliberately speak more on a different platforms. That's something that I just want to
Sure.
give a hint to the viewers. Now, coming back to your question, see, how they operate at the international level, at the propaganda level, is part of the strategy to achieve or to assert this all Zalengam objectives.
Right.
The strategy is number one, it's a combined relations of armed insurrections, which has to be supported by participatory democracy. You join the system, manipulate the systems to your advantage. How you do it, when you do it, that's a different thing. There are so many points that I can say, but the subheading is that you have to be prepared for armed insurrections, armed assault, which has to be supported by your cunning activisms in participatory democracy. Join the system, dominate the politics, dominate the bureaucracy, join the starting from the lowerest rank and files to the uppermost positions. Go there, join there, manipulate it, destroy the system, not for the for developing the idea of Manipur or for the growth and prospect of the people, but for your own sectarian goal. Use it and manipulate it. At the same time, build tactical alliances. These are three key interconnected points where they're doing. And when it comes to tactical alliance, then you build up relations with the monopoly finance capitalists. You build up relationship with the armed forces and the paramilitary forces. You also build up relationship with other fraternal armed groups operating here and there.
Right.
And along with it, you intensify your propaganda. This propaganda will include, historiography, writing, producing fabricated documents and writing completely manipulated history writings, plus build up your collective memory artifacts like, posters,
Right.
and then memorials, gates, and etc. And then also play victimhood card. It's a combination of all these aggressive propaganda, armed aggressions, and political assertions for autonomy that's taking place. It's a long-term project, and no doubt that the West has their own interests as to why they would be playing, or they would be directly or indirectly supporting, and including the Khalistani sectarian forces.
Yes.
Why would they will support these kinds of wrong propaganda, etc., etc. There are so many things to say that,
Right.
but I think that it's large. It's not an overnight production. It's a long-term, drawn-out project spanning over more than 2 decades. They've been trying it very hard. Whether they will achieve it or not will be decided by the big, powerful forces, which has got their own vested interest in the Indo, Myanmar, and Bangladesh borderlands. But as for say, while these imperialist rivalries among the monopoly finance imperialists are taking place in these regions, and where India is collaborating with the United States and the West, it also has got its own geostrategic country-oriented objectives.
Yep.
This is where the cookies are taking advantages. The cookie fascist forces are taking advantages, and they're trying to assert all these phenomenon and these destructive projects called Zalengam. But Zalengam is not free, to tell you truth, it's not free from differences and conflicting antagonistic relations among the Kuki-Kin Mizo groups. That's something that we also need to understand.
Right.
But yes, but when Zalengam and its projection stands alone, then it's a big threat to Manipur,
Yes.
and it's a big threat to humanity, and containing in itself these certain elements of fascist tendency manifested in the Levantsram. And the tactics that I would say is, like Zionist model, where you go take, find shelter, and then increase your population, making use of the participatory democracy, build up your own strength, and raise funds to, your fund through various illicit means, and then start claiming those land as your ancestral land. So
Right.
Levantsram mix up with Zionist model, like the way how the Israel would be doing in Palestine, and all motivated and supported directly or indirectly by the big fascist forces operating at the regional and the global levels, are playing important role, making use of these cookie forces as proxies or sometimes as expendable pounds in the chase, like, so like
Right.
very complex process.
Yeah, very complex process indeed, Tawam Malem. Also, before I get to Tawam Biswajit, few interesting things have happened. Now, this book called Zalengam, written by P.S. Haukep in 1988, has suddenly gained interest because of the crisis that has hit the state. Now, first, Federation of Haumi, this is back in 2020, about 4 years back, had burned the effigies of burned the effigies of Mr. P.S. Haukep and also the book written by him. And as late as October last year, even the people of Nagaland rejected it. So the Zilarong Youth Organization president filed a police complaint against P.S. Haukep in Jaluki police station in Nagaland. So it's not that it's just being rejected by just one community, and also NSNIM made it very clear that NSNIM is already in peace agreement with the government of India, and in this book, the Zalengam book, The Dream of Zalengam, giving feedback on this book, they clearly said cookies shouldn't touch an inch of Naga territory. So I just wanted to bring out few instances where this has been rejected right away. So Tawam Biswajit, coming to you, you heard what Tawam Malem said. You can comment further, but how do you look at this opposition, not just to the book written by P.S. Haukep, but this whole idea of Zalengam by the public?
As I said again, it's a big education for me. It just listening to what it is opening my eyes and my ears a lot, and I believe I'm saying this for lots of people like myself,
Sure,
who are trying to understand further. As I said, I have not had the chance to read
Right.
the Zalengam book, and this is not a justification, but this is a big shot back on myself. If we want to help Manipur, then we should know what's going on, and
Sure.
and this is something that I should have done. And I believe the people who have come up against the book, I am not surprised, because I've seen and where it says about the Nazi philosophy,
Right.
this Levantsram law. I am not surprised people are rejecting it, because this cannot happen in the 21st century, especially from what we saw in the Second World War.
absolutely.
Especially what we saw, what Nazi has done. I came across the Federation of Haumi, were
Right.
very, very against it, because there were lots of issues in the book which was not factually correct. And as Malem has said, I think Manipur is a victim of so many things, including, especially in the last 1 year, of misleading information or disinformation. Every time I talk to somebody, you can feel, you can sense, and you can feel the frustration of how information has been shared to what I call as to fit a narrative rather than what is the fact, rather rather than what is actually happening. And
Right.
is what I see as the Jalarium and the Federation of Mahaumi coming up against this. If at all, if not just Manipur, any place has to move forward. I'm coming back to being a doctor. If somebody's got a cancer and I tell the person has got tonsillitis, the person is going to die because of cancer, because we are not looking after cancer. So it's very, very important we understand what actually is happening. Do you know what I mean? At the same time, if there are lots of people who are sharing misleading information, disinformation, including the press, and if I may just add, the Editors Guild of India, it was, I'm not sure what was the objective, but what I can tell you is the objective was not to bring a way forward, not to bring justice, but there was, it looks like a vested interest. And possibly what it is being seen by the Jalarium community, the Naga community, and in the civilians of Manipur, including the government, who felt that the book was very, very misleading,
Right.
not just misleading, but it was dangerous. Now, there are things that which are misleading, but was potentially harmless, but there are things that are not just misleading, but very, very dangerous. And I
Absolutely.
think this is what we're seeing currently now. Manipur is suffering. Okay, we have been suffering. But what has happened is, we know 4 years ago, there was this concept about what Malem is fencing. And we saw in Moray, when there were issues between two communities, the MEITEIs and the Kukis, when during the ILP. You know, we
Right.
have seen this, but I think we have, in our, especially like individuals like myself, have set back because we are so busy in our own personal life that
Yes.
we did not check the whole picture, and leading to missing lots of moments where we could have intervened and avoid what's happening right now. And I think this is what we have to do really, really carefully, cautiously, and sensitively to understand what's happening, and requesting everyone, especially those in the media and in the leaders who are sharing misleading information that are very, very dangerous, that this is not what 21st century Manipur or any nations in the world needs. What we need is integrity. What we need is honesty. What we need is being factual, and then try to move forward based on the facts, rather than what the facts that we want it to be.
Right, right. Not just the book, Taum Malem, like Taum Bishwajit said, not just the book, but the entire idea of the Zalengam has been rejected by rejected left, right, and center by every right-thinking person. If I mean, personally, of course, Taum Bishwajit said, is yet to go through the books, but there are mentions of so many pages where there are lots of what you call misinformation, like Taum Bishwajit said, and now that it's after Taumalem, you yourself have gone through the book and you've interviewed Mr. P.S. Hauke. Now, if we are leading towards Zalengam, if the crisis doesn't stop yet, like Taum Bishwajit says, the leaders, the press, we have to bring this up, and we are doing our part. But do you think the authorities need to look at this angle now, because it's not been looked into for the past 1 year? So what are your thoughts on that?
See, when you say authorities, who are those authorities? Number one. And before
Right.
that, let me tell you, people burned the book titled Zalengam, the Kuki Nations. But by the time when this title was burned, the title of the book have already changed
Right.
to the world of the cookies. A new print had already come. What they were burning was the old versions. I think the new versions, very few people know the title, and it's very expensive too.
Okay.
So even those people who burnt the title book were not aware that already new versions have come up.
Right.
That's just a small remark. And number two, you said the authorities. You see, it seems to me for the last 1 year and since 2005, and something that has been now exposed by NSC and IM and all,
Yes.
it seems to me that this tendency has been maneuvered or orchestrated directly or indirectly by so-called authorities, means peoples in power.
Right.
They have their own geostrategic interests, as I pointed out.
Mhm.
They are playing a very risky global game, collaborating indirectly or directly with the Western powers, plus their own so-called national geostrategic interests in the Indo-Bangladesh border and Southeast Asia. It seems to me that some peoples in the authorities, influencing peoples in the authorities, it seems to me that they're getting benefited out of this conflict, and they want to perpetuate these things until a point of exhaustion where something which may be favorable to us may not be favorable to us, I don't know.
Right.
But they're waiting for certain exhaustion points where some kind of temporary settlement may arrive.
Right.
Otherwise, seems to me that the authorities or peoples in the authorities are very much part of this conflict, playing proxy roles, playing divisive roles. As I would repeatedly say again, it's a maneuvered program, I should be saying. And so they're sincerely doing it. So when we say the authorities should be sincere, you know, it's question. The word sincerity itself becomes a question. Even the thief would sincerely steal thief, knowing that I'm going to steal it, right? Or even the killer will sincerely kill it because they knew that they're there for killing. So it's up to the wisdom of the authorities that which way should be best for us. But it seems to me that their initial expectations have got collapsed. That's why it's prolonged. And they're not yet winning. They're not able to openly declare a war, but investing more in the proxy war. And I don't know where and when would be the exhaustive point. But all wars in the world come to an end when there is an exhaustion, and when there is a realization that it's not getting benefit anywhere.
Right.
Somebody has to win, somebody has to lose, or there has to be 50-50, but it will come at a saturation point. But I don't know whether the cookies' ambitions of creating a big Zalengam will not be possible.
Absolutely.
But I don't know if they would be able to create some kind of separate administrative system or territorial council within Manipur, which is of course going to be resisted by the peoples who believe in the idea of Manipur. But I know the security, but the people in the authorities, some of them are really trying to carve out the 3 blocks in Manipur based on ethnic lines, what is being called balkanizations, to divide and rule the people for various reasons. I don't know how far they're going to be successful in this.
Right.
But I think whatever they do, the authority is doing it sincerely with a clear-cut objectives, although they are not been in the positions to do it openly and urgently. And I don't know how long they will be successful in doing this.
Right, right. But I mean, like MALEM mentioned, BISHWAJEET, I mean, it's not going to be possible. There will be people who will, reject the idea of either a separate administration or a union territory or a separate state or Zalengam as they call it. And very interesting, in fact, I did not have a chance to go through the entire interview that MALEM, did with PS Haukip long back, but I picked a few important things, BISHWAJEET, just to get your opinion on those. When asked about, we have pinned this interview link on our comment section for our viewers to view as well. But just bring up just a couple of points for discussion this evening. So, when was the concept of Zalengam, when did it actually emerge, is one of the very important questions that MALEM posed, BISHWAJEET, to which PS Haukip said, it means land of freedom, as we know. It says, signifying the age-old self-rule of the Kuki people from time immemorial over their territories. The term was coined by me, by Haukip, he says, as I took over the reign of the KNO-KNA. The concept is as old as the Kuki culture, but the association came about in recent decades. So when he says it is as old as the Kuki culture, BISHWAJEET, he means that this has been going on, this is on the back of the minds for a very, very long time Of course.
That's called fabrications, and
Yes.
yeah, that's where we said it's a complete lies and the fabrications of
Absolutely.
history. That's what we are saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's get Tamo Bishwajit's comments on that, and I want more comments from Tamo Malem. You know, if he could, you know, throw some more lights on the interview that he had with Mr. Haukep. So Tamo Bishwajit, what do you think about that?
It's more of mine is more of a general answer to the response.
Sure.
To this. If we look through the history, truth has always triumphed, facts has always come out, and especially now with all the social media, with all the information, with everything that's going on, the facts, the truth will come out, and it will tell who are the people who are really looking from a humanitarian basis, who are looking from a civilian perspective, who are trying to make sure we move forward, and then there will be those people who are exposed because of what they have done for whatever you know, personal agendas or political agenda. That will definitely come out. And when I looked through a couple of, you know, I had a look at the book, but not had a chance to finish it.
Sure.
So when I looked into it, it mentioned about indigenous people. You know, the definition of indigenous, anyway, there is variability around it, but we know for sure that the British historians have written about, you know, what happened in the 1830s and 1840s, then in the 1870s, and you know, so there's a lot of information around it.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is, how do we coexist and how do we live as citizens of Manipur?
Right.
And somehow the concept of Zalengam, or the concept that has a Nazi ideology in this, seems to have a completely contradict whatever it is in the 21st century.
Right.
And this is where the clash has happened. This is where people are upset, and rightly so. And this is why we all need to, especially the common people, needs to look to this, understand it better, study it better, listen to guys like Malem. You know, he has given a very important understanding of what's actually going on, and we all should be understanding this. And the more we need to learn, the more we honestly introspect and reflect on how much we have learned or how much we do not know, it will help. It will help to defend, it will have to address many of what we call as the fascists, or you know, things that are not in tune with 21st century.
Right.
We have, and that's very what I would say is the core theme that I have learned today, that we need to understand what is actually going on. And we talked about proxy war, we talk about, you know, what's happening in the geopolitics. These are really deep things for individuals, especially civilians, finding it difficult to understand. What we see is that my family is being dispersed, my families are really living in relief camp, families and loved ones are being killed, you know, and there is so much. That's what we see, and what is pushing this, what is causing all this, what is the agenda behind this, is what I call, as in medical terms, again, if there is a cancer in the liver, it will cause a lot of issues, like, you know, people can't eat, people have jaundice. But I cannot just look at the jaundice, I cannot just look at the people and inability to eat. We need to find what's the cause, and the root cause is cancer in the liver. And then that cancer in the liver, I think in Manipur, we're still in the stage where we can still cure it.
Right.
We need to be able to do that. So whoever is writing this book, whoever is writing or doing such kind of disinformation in a very dangerous level, where it has caused massive loss of lives and thousands of displaced, they really need to introspect, and history will judge, and they will judge for sure.
Right, introspection is the need of the hour, says Tamo Bishwajit. Tamo ELANGBAM, going back to Tamo Malem, I just picking a couple more questions that you posed to PS Haukep. Of course, I'd like you to, for our viewers' benefits, if you could, delve a little into, how did you come about with the questionnaire? How was your experience? What did you get out of this? It'll be, beneficial for viewers. But I just want to bring out two more points that you posed about Tipai Muk Dam construction then, and then the ongoing railway construction in Manipur. to which Haukip says, if this developmental activities fails to address the needs of local populations and are exploitive, and this should not be encouraged, is what he told you in the interview. He says the developmental activities should not be encouraged if it is not helping the local population. So just tell us a little more about that, and how did you come about this questionnaire, as I mentioned earlier?
No, see, it's been my long engagement as a historian,
Sure.
writing history on contemporary issues, where I would like to touch upon the insurgencies and the ethnic politics and all. That's how I tried to interview all the important stakeholders. I approached many groups.
Right.
Unfortunately, only 4 groups responded, and PS Haukip's promptly responded, and his response was one of the 4 interviews that I have done it. Well, when you talk about the Paibuk and all, it was very an important burning point at the point of time.
Absolutely.
And it's a place where the Mars are very active. Now, see, there is lots of local dynamics. When he talk about opposing Tipaimuk, it means it has 2 things. One, he's genuinely saying that developmental projects should not be aggressive and extractive at the cost of local populations. That may be true. At the same time, when he is saying that, he is trying to sympathize the Mar people, which is opposed to the Kukis. In fact, because where the Mars were tooth and nail fighting the Tipaimuk along with Meiteis and all, and no Kukis were involved in the fight against the Tipaimuk Dam. That's very clear,
Yeah.
And when it comes to railways and all, the most affected peoples happens to be displaced people happens to be from the Zelairong communities,
Right.
less on Kukis and Mars and the Zombies who were staying at that point of time. So maybe he's genuinely raising that issues, but at the same time, we will see that it have been trying to build relationship with the projected victims who may think that Haukip is sympathizing to us, so he's a good man. Maybe that kind of image projections that he may be trying to do, I don't know. But if it is true that they're collecting taxes from the highways and extortions and from seeking commissions from the projects and then involving in the narco business, then obviously, if that's true, then obviously what he said and what he does are going to be quite contradictory.
Absolutely.
Whatever may be, the writings on historiography is very interesting because it's one way of consolidating people, bringing people together, because it may be wrong, it may be fabricated, but it has the political implications. Now you're creating a narrative, constantly memorializing, trying to convince people. Even if it is lies and repeatedly said, then it has a psychological impact, and it obviously impact and influence the people's mind. Number one, the cookies and Zols and the Mars and the Pite extra would be brought together.
Right.
Or number two, it could have conveyed a different meaning to the international audience, who would uncritically consume those items and start believing that, oh well, there is a people who have been suppressed and all. And the most interesting point is, like, there's lots of anachronisms, showing a solidified cookies from the time immemorial, showing them in such a way that what happened in Chittagong,
Right.
hill tracks in Bangladesh, is being referred to in Manipur like this. The way how this the anachronistic kind of references in taxing has been doing.
Right.
But interestingly, in historiography, they have periodized cookie history in Manipur into 3 groups, 3 parts. 1, pre-British period.
Yes.
2, the British period. And 3rd, post-independent period.
Right.
And the pre-British period, they're saying that we were sovereign. Pre-British period is shown to be a sovereign cookie period, where they were enjoying freedoms and liberties and sovereignties. Then comes the British, where they were enjoying, this is how they're saying, where they
Right.
were enjoying some kind of autonomous war model within the structure called Manipur. That's what they're trying to say. And after independence, then it's a period of devastation. It's a period where cookies have been subjugated, where they need to intensify their activism to the level that they regain the status and the benefits that they try to project as they have been enjoying in the past, in the pre-British period. This
Right.
is how they have periodized Goki history into 3 historical times. And Zalengam idea, concept, and the political projects and the territorial expressions and the strategies are applicable in the present because after 1947, particularly after 98, because they think that it is the period where they have been completely subjugated and they need to reclaim the sovereignty they have lost since the onset of British rule, where the Meitei king collaborated and suppressed. This is how they are trying to show. This is the way how they have been projecting the historiography, and this is where they are in fact playing, you know, a victimhood card and trying to win support from the international NGOs, from the uncritical Christian or say religious institutions, and of course the big powerful blocs in the West who would like to play proxy games for their own interest in this borderline area.
Right.
This is how I would definitely say that. So it's a historiographical project, and whatever questions on developmental things that they have tried to hear or they have tried to show in the interviews appears to be quite contradictory what is happening now.
Right.
And let me tell you, Keno and PS Hawkit is just one of the stakeholders.
Right.
That's something that I want to remind. There
Sure.
are many stakeholders, even among those who believe in the idea of Zalengam.
Right.
And the idea of Zalengam itself is contested by the Mijos who believe in the idea of Zogam or Zoram, Jomiland, Joland. So, like, you know, it's never freed.
Right.
But epicenter right now is in Manipur because of the Zalengam impact and other sectors, the Jaws and the Mars and the Paites are also playing important role.
Right.
And when we say Zalengam, it strictly pertains to cookies, but I'm telling you there are also other stakeholders.
Sure. Sure. And like Tamo Malem rightly mentioned, it's a complex issue. It's a larger issue, and we definitely need more time to discuss this issue. Maybe in the future we can, you know, catch up sometime again, Tamo Bishwajeet and Tamo Malem. For today, just because of the time, we'll have to end it here. Tamo Bishwajeet, Tamo Malem, thank you gentlemen so much for joining us on the show. And viewers, that's all we have for today. But we'll be back in the next episode with more. Until then, goodbye.